You're listening to the Underscore Transformation Podcast, your practical guide to business transformation.
Welcome to the Underscore Transformation Podcast. This is episode 6. My name's Jason West.
And my name's Joe Ailes.
And together we're the founders of Underscore.
In this episode, we're focusing our attention on vision, objectives, and design principle. So many aspects of functional transformation are unknown and unknowable when you begin. So in their nature, these programs tend to be disruptive, often formed in response to existential threats or urgent opportunities. Sometimes timelines can stretch well beyond annual budgeting cycle, and information often sort of builds over time. These things tend to put us into territory of unknown unknowns. In these circumstances, what your team needs is clear, simple direction that allows them to make decisions in the moment that will ultimately get you to that destination. So, Jason, how do organizations go about achieving this?
So it starts off with the vision. What is that destination? Where are we going? And being able to articulate that in a really simple, compelling way that engages people at an emotional level as well as an intellectual level. So what we found works really well in the past is you've got to communicate with people in a number of different styles. So some people will, respond to things written down. Others, it's having conversations and talking to perhaps their manager about it. Others, they want to hear from the absolute top of the organization about where we're going. But I think the key thing is that you include more than just words. So as much as possible, include pictures. That can be a really effective way of engaging quite a large group of people. And we've had an experience recently, haven't we? With a client of ours where they were transforming their finance function. And it would be fair to say there was a degree of skepticism about putting 300 finance professionals in a room and asking them to draw pictures. Because, accountants don't do stuff like that.
But let's not be stereotypical in this episode.
It wasn't us saying it, was it? It was our clients. Yeah. They were a little bit nervous, but
they were a bit nervous about the exercise, very powerful. It
was incredible. So we had a graphic artist come down and he kind of, we got people up, groups of people around this huge room, big paper, big A0 sheets of paper, and got people to draw out here's our destination. This is what it's going to look like and feel like. Here's where we are today. Here's some of the problems, and then the journey to get from one to the other. The level of artistry that came out of these alleged, sort of reserved accountants was amazing.
Yeah, I think it might have put the artist out of work, I reckon, some of the quality of the drawings. But actually it really helped illustrate the journey that the organization has to go through to get to that end point. And actually what was really interesting about this particular exercise was that actually everybody could relate to every image that was on that final picture, and that picture actually is being used throughout the program as their vision. So it's actually words almost are insignificant compared to what that picture is actually illustrates. It was really, really interesting. It's an exercise that we've done with twice now, and it's proved very, very effective in helping in this case the CFO illustrate where the organization wants to get to.
Yeah, but vision only really gets you so far. Yeah, you've got to make sensible, appropriate decisions along the way. So one way of providing that guidance to the program team as they're thinking through, well, what are the things that we need to decide on? What are those new processes, new systems, new policies, whatever it might be, is around the strategic objectives. So these really do need to be well thought through. You shouldn't have perhaps too many. They've got to be strategic. They've got to be at a pretty high level, but they've got to be smart. They've got to be specific. They've got to be measurable. They have to be achievable, relevant, and time bound. And it's really important to land those objectives with key members of your leadership team. So actually putting owners against specific metrics or specific objectives really helps to gather that, ensure ownership and that there's somebody that feels personally accountable for ensuring that gets delivered.
Very outcome focused. These objectives need to be, don't they?
Yeah.
They're not your how you're going to execute your change. It's what are the outcome? What's the destination going to look like when we get there? So the transformation is going to take us along this path. This is the vision that I've set out, and these are the outcomes that we're going to achieve once we get there.
Yeah.
And actually sometimes even beyond, because you don't achieve those strategic objectives at the point of when you go live with that transformation or system implementation or whatever change you're executing.
Yeah, and some of them you might actually deliver before a big bang of technology. They really are those key milestones along the way.
Absolutely,
and linking your benefits realization to those milestones is an essential way of ensuring you actually deliver your business case, and they do help during design meetings. If you have them there, you can say, we're talking about a particular point. Does this take us further towards, or maybe further away from some of these strategic objectives? And you can get into a bit of conflict between different objectives at times. And I think really that's where the design principles act as a compass. So if your vision is your ultimate destination, your strategic objectives are your kind of milestones along the way, then the design principles are the compass that help people kind of steer their way towards those objectives.
And these are so important. So design principles, these are really important because actually it's a way of translating at a program level further down the organization into language that actually people might understand. And actually sometimes strategic objectives, they're quite confidential because there's some potential, maybe restructuring, maybe efficiency objectives that you don't necessarily want to expose to those involved in a project. So absolutely is a key objective of the sponsor. But sometimes it's difficult to be totally transparent about what the program's trying to achieve, especially when there's efficiency associated with it. So the design principles, there's an easy way of translating some of that, the strategic objectives into operational design thinking for the team.
I think it's important to think about the number of design principles that you have.
Yeah.
You can have too many.
Yes, and if they start becoming conflictual with each other, you're doing something wrong. So they have to be complementary.
Yeah, and it's an area that it's always worth spending the time here and getting people engaged in laying out your design principles. You need to have a really clear understanding of what the objectives of the program are. So some of it, to your point earlier, you can't go too broad with these kind of principles when you're putting them together. But actually getting input once you have some of those principles and kind of just road testing them out there. But when we think about the number of them, you don't really want any more than 9.
Yeah.
You probably want somewhere between 4 and 8, ideally.
Definitely, yeah.
It becomes a bit too difficult to keep them all in your mind when you're in a design workshop or you're thinking about how you're going to map out your future process for whatever it might be. But actually having them a kind of a combination of simple statements with then kind of a bit more further information and a further description against them. So the kind of 6 or 8 simple statements are just really easy to refer back to, but then there's that kind of further description that sits behind it. And having them printed and up on the wall and
available
all your program meetings, all your design meetings, that you have that just constant touchstone to go back to. We're sitting in a design authority and we're trying to mediate between the demands of one process owner versus another. Well, you know what? Your design principles are going to help you.
You're listening to the Transformation Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the Transformation Capability Specialists. To find out more, visit _group.com.
And actually, another point that's also important when you create your design principles is actually prioritize them.
Yeah.
In design workshops, you are going to come across conflict. It's normal. But then you refer to your point, having these things in a room on a wall. you refer individuals to it and say, actually, do you know what? We're debating about something that's priority 1 versus priority 7. So priority 1 stands, so let's move on. It's really, really important that you use these design principles to unlock debate. Stop, allow the program to move, allow your design to progress. And this is our point, is stop dying in ditches over things, because actually what the executive agreed is I want a vision that gets us to A, so a set of strategic objectives that we're going to deliver when we get there, and these are design principles that are going to support us making the right design decisions to achieve our strategic objectives.
Yeah.
So it just allows fluidity into the whole design of whether it's policy, process, technology, operating model, etc.
Yeah. So it's important not to put your design principles in a drawer after you finish the design process. They really do need to be an active part of your program, even through to your change management. If you're thinking through how you're engaging people and the communications you're putting out there, how does that align to the design principles that you had on the program? So if you had a principle of keeping it simple, for example, and you have really complex,
complicated your process or your policy,
or you're communicating in complex language. That really doesn't line up. You're not walking the talk.
That's a really interesting point, actually, because the design principle is not just in terms of what you're implementing. You're right. It's taking it across the entire program, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's about taking that design principle and applying it to your change. What I think is also important is the design principles must never be put in a drawer. Yeah. They must be lived and breathed throughout the life cycle of the program. But so will the strategic objectives.
Yes.
The audience that has visibility of those might be slightly different audience to those that are involved in the design. But they're the exec steercos or the sponsor's compass in terms of what stays in scope or not in scope.
Yes.
Very often we see the pressures of a particular sort of system implementation or a particular some sort of transformation.
Launch of a shared service center.
Exactly, launch of a shared service center. That
Yeah.
drives the individuals in the project to make a set of decisions about what goes into scope and what comes out of scope. You need to use your strategic objectives as a tool to help you validate whether something stays in scope or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the exec must always have strategic objectives in the forefront of their mind when they're reviewing the progress of a particular program.
Yeah, because it's all too easy for the people that are delivering that program to get fixated on what they're doing right now and what's just around the corner and this risk or that issue that they're managing. It can be so easy to get lost in the detail of just managing the change that you kind of lose sight of why and what.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a key role for the exec steerco and the operational steerco as well. I think the other place that design principles kind of come to the fore is in testing. So actually, as you're testing your new processes, your new systems, that you actually give your test manager your design principles, and actually say, look, you're going to be looking through this stuff. You're looking for defects and those sorts of things. But actually, are we meeting these design principles? Where are we deviating? And any decision to deviate from a design principle really does need to be thought through very carefully, as you've said, but also keep a record of it. So we've made a conscious decision to break with this design principle in this specific instance because of these good reasons, and actually document that. So it can be so easy for it to be obvious at that point in time where you make the decision. But 3 months later, after you've gone live and all the consultants and the contractors have left, that decision just becomes utterly unfathomable.
Yes. Yeah.
So actually having that record, and I think that's true of nearly all decisions on a program, that you have that discipline, that you have somebody that's there tracking the decisions, why they were made, who made them, and sort of when, where, how, who, what.
Yeah, and even beyond go live, actually, like you said, as you're migrating whatever change you're implementing into some sort of BAU, And nowadays with SaaS technology, as we know, it changes, it evolves all the time.
Yes.
So actually the next release of the product that brings about new functionality and new new modules, etc., keeping those design principles forefront of your mind as you're like you outlined earlier, as a compass that helps you make the right design decisions, will help you embed the change that you've initiated.
Yeah, absolutely. So in summary, vision is absolutely critical. It needs to describe your destination with real clarity and engage emotionally. Use words and pictures.
And engage as many people as possible in helping you describe what that journey is going to look like. You absolutely will have the destination in mind, but you won't have the detail about how things operate in reality. Those individuals across the organization will.
Yeah. Strategic objectives, absolutely key. Make sure they're smart, make sure they're owned, and somebody is accountable and holding themselves to account for delivering them. And design principles are going to help you guide your way. It will help your team make decisions in the moment, but really invest time in this area and be mindful that there's no conflict between the different design principles. Also, don't have too many.
Yes.
And those three things will absolutely help you get to your destination in the best shape possible, will help your team make decisions in the moment when, you as the sponsor can't be across everything. And they're fundamental to the ultimate success of your program.
Thanks, Jason. So next week is the all-important topic of governance and decision-making. We'd love to hear your feedback on this episode, so please contact the show via Twitter @_comms, our WhatsApp group, or via our website _group.com. Please remember to subscribe and share. Thank you very much.